Welcome back to the New Insight Podcast, where we explore the breakthroughs shaping the future of retinal care. I'm Dr. Veeral Sheth, and today we're diving into a technology that's pushing the boundaries of what any of us thought was possible, restoring functional vision in patients who are legally blind. I'm joined by someone I've known for years, Dr. Ashish Patel, whose journey from the lab bench to leading multiple major launches in retina has positioned him perfectly for his role at Nanoscope Therapeutics. Nanoscope is developing an optogenetic therapy delivered by a single intravitreal injection aimed at helping patients with advanced photoreceptor loss see again. We'll talk about how this platform works, why it's different from past gene therapy approaches, what the clinical data are showing, and how close we may be to the first FDA-approved therapy capable of restoring vision in retinitis pigmentosa, with Stargardt's and geographic atrophy not far behind. So, without further delay, please enjoy my conversation with Dr. Ashish. So, Ashish, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm really excited for our audience to get to know you personally, but also the company Nanoscope. And so, let's just jump right in. Tell me a little bit about Nanoscope, or first, actually, tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got to Nanoscope, because the audience doesn't know you and I have known each other for a long time. So, give us a little bit of your history, and then we'll jump into the company.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Veeral, for having me. I really appreciate it. About me, so I'm a scientist by training. So I have a PhD. I actually worked on rhodopsin for my PhD. So I have coming full circle on the ophthalmology side. I plan to be a professor. I plan to do research for my whole career. But then the lure of industry grabbed me quite a bit young right when I got done with my PhD. So I got lucky enough to be at Novartis for my early career. And they put me into an MBA program as well. So I got my MBA while I was there. And then I went to Bayer. So I jumped around from two big pharma companies. And while I was at Bayer, they were launching this small drug called Eylea back in 2015. And they were launching DME. And they said, "Oh, you have an ophthalmology background. Why don't you come join us and launch this thing?" I actually was working there. I didn't even know what Eylea was, and that's how small it was with Bayer outside the U.S. And of course, then as soon as I got into it, the first month I was hooked. It brought back all my ophthalmology background. Retina was fascinating to me, and I got to launch Eylea for DME. And then eventually, then went from there back to Novartis to help launch Beovu, where I think you and I met. And then got the pleasure of launching Izervay as well in the U.S. So I've been at two large pharma companies, Novartis and Bayer, and now I'm at two biotech startups. I went from large pharma to biotech, where Izervay was on Iveric Bio, as you know, and now I'm at Nanoscope. So really, to know about me, it's a really full circle journey from the lab and benchtop to commercialization. And I'm really, really lucky to have been in retina for over 10 years now.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, you've got a wide variety of just kind of working with big companies, smaller companies, multiple major launches, right? And so that's amazing. So Nanoscope's kind of is lucky to have you. So tell us about Nanoscope. What is Nanoscope Therapeutics, and what are they working on?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Nanoscope is a privately held company. It's based out of Dallas, Texas. It's run by the founders of the technology, actually. And it's really a leader in optogenetics, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, in a minute, which is going after degenerative retinal diseases. If you think about it, in my opinion, the patients with severe vision loss that are legally blind or worse due to photoreceptor death are the most underserved in retina. We have lots of tools at your disposal in your clinic, which treat patients at earlier disease before they go blind to prevent blindness. But when they go blind, we don't have a lot of options. So that's really what Nanoscope is focused on. It's focused on being a leader in this optogenetic space. And its lead asset that's been developed for a very long time now, over 10 years, is called MCO-010. And this is a optogenetic technology, which is basically introducing an opsin into a degenerated retina, where the bipolar cells and ganglion cells are still intact, but unfortunately the photoreceptors are gone, and it makes the bipolar cells de facto photoreceptors, so that these patients that have severe vision loss can see again. What's interesting about Nanoscope is, to me, what actually lured me there as well, is that it's been developed in-house fully. So this is a technology that was taken by the founders. I know you know one of the founders, Samar Mohanty. Um, he was a lead researcher that was working on this optogenetic technology at a university, and then created the company Nanoscope to help develop it in the clinic, and then take it now to commercialization. So I've been there for about a year now, a little more than a year. And the goal of Nanoscope right now is to launch MCO-010, lead asset in retinitis pigmentosa, and eventually take that to Stargardt's disease, and really potentially also geographic atrophy as well.
So talk a little bit about optogenetics. I know there's I think kind of multiple people working on this in this space, and I think you guys are taking kind of a unique angle to it. So tell us a little bit about, let's go broad, optogenetics, and then how you guys might be a little bit different or differentiated in that space.
Yeah, it's a good question. So optogenetics has been around for a while. I know there's been a lot of companies in the past 10, 15 years actually that have used this idea of introducing a light sensitive protein into the eye that could then mimic a photoreceptor. That's basically the idea behind optogenetics. But it's been hard, frankly, to get a a opsin, essentially a light sensing protein, to be broadband, highly sensitive, have fast kinetics, and introduce that into a gene therapy, a capsid, and then put that into the eye. So very complicated. So now you're taking gene therapy, which is already complicated, and you're taking a full protein, an opsin, trying to introduce that into a bipolar cell, which normally doesn't express these opsins, as we know. So the idea behind MCO-010, really in optogenetics, is to crack that holy grail of taking this opsin, which is very difficult to manufacture and to make into a protein, viable protein, and put that into a cell, the bipolar cell, that doesn't have an opsin to begin with. And that's essentially what optogenetics really is. And just to tell you a little bit of the history that I got to know after starting working here, as you know, sometimes you have opsins that aren't sensitive, so you have to put goggles on, which stimulate these opsins. And there have been other companies that have shown that you can do that with, but it's cumbersome. It's very difficult to put these on, and other opsins are only attainable to single wavelengths of light. So all you see is blue or green or red. And what happens there is that you still have some stimulation. However, you're not getting the full picture for functional vision, which is what really the patients are demanding. Or the kinetics are not fast, and that the opsin is basically like an ion channel. It doesn't let the ions come into this bipolar cell fast enough. So there's a blurring effect that people see, or a kind of they see kind of halo, the streaks in their vision, which doesn't really help them navigate what they want to do. So again, I'd summarize by saying optogenetics is really revolutionary, in my opinion, and Nanoscope is at the forefront. Imagine taking patients that are counting fingers, hand motion, no light perception, and then having them being able to navigate a maze. They can start to read some letters on what's called a Friedberg visual acuity test, which we can talk about in a minute. And start to get some of that functional vision back, which is seeing outlines of faces, seeing being able to see the volume on their TVs, which they couldn't see before, navigating through their house at night. It's very, very interesting when you really start to talk to these patients about what they see. It's mind-blowing to have a patient go from being essentially blind to having some functional vision back.
Yeah, so that's amazing. I mean, we don't have anything like that right now, right? We have these patients in our clinic, RP patients, Stargardt patients, GA patients that are increasingly frustrated over time because they see is that they're losing their vision and there's nothing they can do about it. And it's frustrating for us as providers too, right? Because really we're seeing these patients, and again, not much we can do, and we can see them kind of losing hope in front of our eyes over time, right? So it's amazing to actually be talking about kind of restoring vision, or at least some functional vision that we're talking about. So let's talk about that data that you guys have generated so far. So what are you seeing in terms of clinical trial data, and then we'll kind of translate that to what it means in the real world for these patients.
Sure. So one thing to mention I want before we get to our data, it's interesting that we talk about it. So remember, like, I think pigmentosa and Stargardts are also inherited retinal diseases, genetic disorders. So they're caused by mutations. So there was in 2017, Luxturna was approved, as you know, for RP. But it was only for a specific mutation called RPE65. And only 1 to 3% of RP patients actually have this mutation. So it was everybody was very excited when a while back when this was approved. The issue is though that unfortunately a lot of patients, over 95%, were not eligible for that. So what's also interesting about optogenetics is that it's what we call a disease agnostic and gene agnostic technology. So it doesn't matter what mutation happened to cause a degeneration, as long as the bipolar cells and ganglion cells are intact, we can then express these opsins there. So I just wanted to mention that as a
Yeah.
also a very important point about optogenetics. It's a little different than past gene therapies that have come out.
Really important point. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So the data is very interesting. So essentially, we have a few trials that Nanoscope has been a part of. There's been a phase 1/2 trial that was done with MCO-10 in RP. It was an open label trial. It was not controlled. It was just a dose ranging study. And in that study, every patient in that study showed vision gains due to after being dosed with MCO-10. And we have now 5-year data on those patients showing that they maintain their vision, and there has been no severe adverse events due to introducing MCO-10. So around the time that they hit the 2-year mark on that data, Nanoscope decided to say, okay, we need to do a proper trial now that will be registrational. And that trial was called Restore. So Restore was a phase 2b/3 study that looked at patients that had on average 20/1600 vision in their good eye, and and that was tested again. It was sham controlled study out to 1 year. And what was shown in that trial is that on average, patients were able to see 0.3 logmar of vision gains. So for those that are familiar with logmar, I wasn't until I joined Nanoscope. That's equivalent to 3 lines of vision on an eye chart that we have. So it's profound to see that, and and that's versus sham. And it was a very interesting study. So it was n equals 27. So there were 9 patients in sham, 9 patients on a lower dose, and 9 patients on a higher dose. So both doses actually showed statistical significance at 1 year, and now we're developing the higher dose to go out for commercialization. And we now have 3-year data that we just presented at AAO, showing that those patients maintain that 3-line vision gain over 3 years up and beyond. Now we'll follow these patients up to 5 years as well, and we feel very confident that this one-time injection of MCO-10 will be able to restore vision in patients that are legally blind for 3 years or more.
Yeah, and that's an important point because I don't think we touched on it. This is a single intravitreal injection, right? I know a lot of people that are familiar with gene therapy know that there's lots of ways to administer the gene therapy. This is obviously the most user-friendly, in my opinion, right?
Yeah, it's a good point. What's also, as you know, and Luxturna is a good example of this, you could have a great therapy, but if it's very hard to administer, or the market uptake may not be what people expect. What's nice about MCO-10 is it's more like a biologic than a gene therapy from a physician point of view. It's an one-time in-office injection. It does not require any surgery, no bleb, no extra work on your end. And it's for the patient, we really like it because also there's no genetic testing required, so they don't have to come back. All you really need is a confirmed diagnosis of RP on a fundus photograph, and then you can feel confident that this patient can get the MCO-10. And what's also interesting about it is Of course, there's going to be some monitoring. There's going to be, you're going to want to track the patients over time. There's no need for a re-injection so far. We don't believe that that's actually going to happen even for 5 years plus. And it's really a revolution technology, because in the end, if you think about the MOA, you are um, taking this opsin and putting it into a bipolar cell. The bipolar cells are the same cells we've had since we were born. They do not divide, they do not degenerate, they do not turn over at all. So once you've introduced the opsin into that bipolar cell, it's been shown that it will stay there. And so that's also a really nice way to think about why this could be a real revolution and a one-time therapy that's not too cumbersome for the patient or the practitioner.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, really, you're saying revolutionary. I would say game changer for these patients, right? Again, as someone that has seen these patients, over time, it's something where even talking to them about this potential treatment is giving them hope, right? Which is great. So let's talk about that, because the patients are asking, and our partners are asking, what's the timeline? What are you working on next, and how do we get this in our hands?
Yeah, it's a big question. So for RP, great news is that we have submitted the BLA now to the FDA. So we had a great meeting with the FDA in April of this year, a pre-BLA meeting where we asked all the questions we needed to. Do we need this? Do we need that? You know how those go. And we were very happy with the outcome of that. That led us to start what's called a rolling BLA, which I hadn't known about a lot until I came here, but it's basically, instead of submitting all of your modules to the FDA at once, they allow you to submit it over time. And that was allowed because, as you know, Nanoscope MCO-010 has fast track and orphan designations with the FDA, which potentially could give us also priority review down the road. But most importantly, also it gives us a lot of extra time with the FDA, a lot of interaction with them leading up to that BLA decision. We had 6 meetings with the FDA before even the pre-BLA meeting. So we had a lot of interaction with them. And why is that? Why? It's because this is the first technology, as we talked about, that is restoring vision in blind patients, and it was with the primary endpoint being BCVA. So they really had to work with us a lot. So I wanted to tell that, because in the end, what's important is we get this to patients, and I want everyone to know that we feel very confident, because of the strong interaction with the FDA, that this will, hopefully get approved down the road. So the rolling BLA has started. To go back to that, we've submitted a few modules, and we have to submit the last one, we hope, early next year. Then, as the FDA takes their time, 60 days to make sure the package is correct, etc., we really cross our fingers that we will get priority review, which means 6 months. So ideally, we could be looking at this time of next year that MCO-010 is on the market for RP. My hope is, as the commercial guy, is to be able to have it approved before AAO and really make a splash and be able to, talk to you and all of our colleagues about the potential benefits of MCO-010. I'm getting ahead of ourselves, but it's possible.
Yeah, no, it's good. Look, it's good to be ambitious, right? And we know, and especially as two people that have been so involved in these clinical trials, we know anything can happen. But we know the demand is there, right? So in terms of rolling out clinical trials, the patients are there, and it's now just getting it to them, getting the data, and then obviously hoping that the FDA doesn't drag their feet. But it sounds like you guys are in good shape in that regard, which is super promising for us as clinicians. So that's outstanding. I mean, is there anything else you want to highlight? Because I think this gives our audience a good, kind of insight into what Nanoscope Therapeutics is working on, a little bit of the history, and where things are going in our timeline and expectations. Anything else you think we would want to address?
Yeah, a couple of things I think, which are I'm glad we were able to really educate on where Nanoscope is and optogenetics in general. Like you said, I think I think it's a revolutionary technology. Game changer, I'll take it for sure. But it's not just RP, so Stargardt's disease is also something which is a burden on a lot of patients. Unfortunately, there's even more blind patients in Stargardt's than there are in RP. So just to also highlight that we've also shown positive results in a phase 2 trial for Stargardt's disease called Starlight. In these patients, we actually tested them on a regular eye chart, so the ETDRS chart. So these are better seeing patients that we tested, and in those patients, we saw 12 letter gains in those patients on average when the disease was confined to the macula. So it shows you that even the most severe patients with macular disease and with atrophy, as we know, Stargardt's disease is called kind of juvenile macular atrophy as well. We can potentially also restore vision there. And so it's just showing that the vastness of this technology. I call it more of like a platform, even though it's a drug per se. It has many applications. So I want everyone to understand that yes, RP is the first, disease we're going to tackle. I think we're going to tackle and overcome Stargardt's disease, blindness as well. And eventually, we also have preclinical studies in some animal models showing that in a GA model, we can also get expression of MCO-10 in that disease as well. And the idea is to start a phase 2 trial for in GA starting next year as well. So it's a big year for Nanoscope. I'd like to end it on that. We have potentially approval in RP next year. We're going to start a phase 3 trial called Stargaze in Stargardt's disease, and we will also start a phase 2 trial in GA called Genesis, which we're just starting now. And hopefully we can really show the vastness of this platform technology for all patients with severe vision loss due to photoreceptor death.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, because I can tell you it's like a broken record in my office about with patients that, like GA patients are a great example where we're talking about treatments right now. I'm glad we have treatments, but really these treatments are slowing down kind of the progression. So they're still getting worse over time. Because those patients will ask time and time again, whether they're starting treatment, whether they're a year into treatment, hey, my vision's not getting any better. And right now, I said broken record because it's the same conversation, which is there's nothing we can do to make your vision better, right? And so to finally be kind of shifting our mentality a little bit. And again, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. This all still has to get approved in our hands. But to your point, right now we're talking about RP, but are we then talking about Stargardt's a year later, and are we talking about GA a year later after that, and really now kind of changing the game in a broader sense for many more patients. So super, super exciting. And again, really appreciative that you came onto our show today and talked about this, because I think this is something that people need to know about, that patients need to know about, that our fellow physicians need to know about. And so very thankful for you and your time today, and thankful for the work that Nanoscope is doing on behalf of our patients. So thank you again, Ashish.
No, thanks, Veeral. I appreciate it. It's due to physicians like you that push us to really come after those patients that are the highest unmet need. I know you and I have talked multiple times around these types of patients, so I'm just really lucky to be here and working with this team and working with you and your colleagues to get the best medicine out for your patients.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk again in a year when we're on the verge of approval, hopefully. Okay.